he's a very compelling speaker. If you weren't able to tell from the the speech there, and really does like to drive home the importance of making sure that the way in which we do education is flexible enough to support everyone there. And I wanted to choose that video because I thought it was a really good segue into this conversation we're actually getting ready to have here, called Lessons Learned from Three Institutions About Adult Learners from Recruitment to Job Advancement. So what I wanted to do before I turn it over, was just to give a little bit of an introduction to some of the folks who we have coming here. So first, I wanted to just welcome Buffy Tanner, as well as Tracy Robinson and Matt Bergman and Carl Fletcher, to this conversation here. Wanted to thank you all for taking times out of your busy schedules to have that conversation with us here today. I think that the conversation that we're having here is going to be really important and really key, especially in light of just um, some of the adjustments and changes and challenges that we've seen here, and over the course of the last 6 to 12 months. In particular, what we've seen in terms of some of the challenges with trying to get people to come back to school, with regards to just some of the financial aid things, as well as some of the challenges with getting particularly adult learners through to that end result. Some of the things that, for example, we heard with Jason Palmer earlier about things like creating that 15 to finish and things like that to really try and help to move that needle there. So that's part of the reason why this conversation here is so key and so pivotal for our ability to move the needle. And I really just wanted to say that I admire the work that you all are doing to help us to be able to get there. So I know you're not here, everyone's not here to hear me talk, they're here to hear you all talk. So without further ado, I'll go ahead and transition over and just say welcome.
Thank you so much. We really appreciate having you having us, and just for the Upswing team, Melvin, Elena, and then Jason's excellent presentation, and then Dr. Hagerbrook. That was a great TED Talk to lead us into this conversation. And we hope that what we talk about today will somehow translate via a couple of nuggets at your institution or your organization to really support adult learners in their pathways to completion, whatever completion that may be. As we heard from Jason, there is movement in enrollment in a positive direction for some of the short-term and stackable. We'll talk a little bit about that, but we also believe that is also a pathway to get people into degree-seeking associates and or baccalaureate attainment. So you'll hear from myself, Tracy, and Buffy, and we're going to talk about, first of all, our institutions and the context they're in. And then we are going to go into three particular categories where we have all talked with one another as a band, as a team for so many years now, almost 10 years now, where we have worked together to try and find best practices that we can adopt in an open source format. So we want you to know that everything we talk about, we will share documents, we will share ideas, and we will share some of the pitfalls that we have struggled with along the years. So as we jump into that, I want to start with framing your brains, okay? Think individually, your own experience with not finishing something you had intended to finish in your life. That could be as simple as the paint that you have in the guest bedroom of your house, the trim, some project that you have in the garage, some major undertaking in your life, a job promotion, something that you have strived for in your life. Think about that just for a moment. How does that make you feel? It doesn't make you feel a sense of pride and happiness, does it? So it's important to understand that every person that is considering reconnecting with our institution or transferring into our institution is feeling some sort of way about trying to finish what they started last year or long ago. And as we think about the way we work with them, you're going to hear from myself and Buffy and Tracy ways that we reframe our thinking to adapt to these people that are struggling or feeling a sense of stigma about not finishing what they had intended to, whether that was a long time ago or just recently. Now, at the University of Louisville, this is a very traditional institution. I've got a colleague on another panel coming up, Jeff Bailey, and he will speak to some of our support for very traditional age students. And we serve a heck of a lot of traditional age students. We're committed to those folks, but we finally are on the map. And I say we because I serve adult learners and I have been serving them for 20 plus years. And now we are at the conversation of the main table where we haven't been for many, many years. And I know that's true for many institutions that may be represented today, but know that as you are trying to adapt, as you are trying to serve a subpopulation of learners, it's happening at traditional institutions more and more going forward. So I'll pass it off to Tracy at the University of Memphis.
Hello, everyone. Thanks again so much for having us. We're excited to dive into these topics with you today. I come from the University of Memphis, that's kind of in the heart of Memphis, Tennessee. We're an urban serving institution, public, 4-year and doctoral degree granting institution. I've been at the institution for more than 20 years, and like Matt, we do serve a large traditional population, but I have been working with our adult learners for much of my time at the institution. We are part of SACS COC as far as accreditation goes, because many ask about that as we talk about some of the things that we'll talk about today. And over 250 areas of study. And our program, our signature program for adult learners is the Finish Line program, which specifically targets students who got to senior status and didn't graduate. We help bring them back and finish what they started. Thanks. I'll turn it over to you, Buffy.
Good morning, everybody. I'm Buffy Tanner from Shasta College, and Shasta College is a 2-year public community college, which is part of the California Community College system. We are in the part of California north of Sacramento. It's the part of California that most of the US, including California, doesn't know exists. We're very rural. We have a population of about a little over 12,000 students, but our FTE is just about 6,500, so a lot of part-time students. That 10,000 figure represents the square miles that our community college region covers. We cover 3 counties and 10,000 square miles. We have about 250,000 people in those 10,000 square miles. So definitely the opposite of University of Louisville and University of Memphis. We're pretty spread out and scattered. But the eye-opening number is 31.2, which in 2014-15, we were doing some research and we found that 31.2% of our adults over the age of 25 had some college and no degree. We're the only public institution of higher ed in that 3-county area. Those are our students. So they left for whatever reason, but we were not making it easy for them to come back until we started a new program called ACE in 2016. ACE stands for Accelerated College and Education. And nope, it doesn't. It stands for Accelerated College Education. Sorry, mind blank for a second. When we built the program, the grand extent of recruiting that we did for the program was, one, to build a program that was designed extensively for working parenting adults. And this is key. You can't just invite adult learners who have left your institution back to the same institution. They left for a variety of reasons. And if they haven't come back yet, it's because your institution isn't working for them. So you have to build something different for them. And then you have to tell them about it. Now, some students, when they hear about it, they're going to self-identify, reach out, and come back. Others, you might need to do some digging into your data, identify them, and reach out and do some marketing. We did some work with the Institute for Higher Education Policy Degrees When Due effort in 2018, and we've had phenomenal success of identifying and bringing students back who are just this close to finishing. So our outreach and messaging in 2016-17 when we started was so minimal. We did a postcard in 2016. We did another postcard mailer in 2017, and we did some radio ads. We were hoping for our first cohort to have about 25 students. We had over 88 respond with another 120 following up in the 2 weeks after our information session. Doing our Degrees When Due work in 2018 also brought in more students. Then off and on, we've done presentations to community organizations, to county and local government agencies, to larger businesses. Again, we're a rural area. We don't have massive corporations in our backyard, so it's a lot of small business and medium business. But our messaging was very clear and specific that this program is designed for you. The other messaging is that we have case management. We are not asking the student to, by themselves, get reconnected to the college and go through all of the application processes. We have staff that basically holds up their hand and says, hey, if this is overwhelming to you, we will walk you through this. And the other thing that's key is that it's one point of contact. They don't need to remember, do I go to admissions? Do I go to financial aid? Do I talk to account? They just remember ACE at shastacollege.edu and one phone number, and we connect them either within our office, find out everything that they need to know, or if they have something more complex, reach out to the other office, figure out what the issue is, and then get back to the student. So no run around. So we also have our own counselors within the program. And so it's essentially kind of a closed loop. And we keep the students close because we know that they don't have the time to waste to run around campus. The other key thing about our program is the structure. And the structure we have utilized compressed classes. So Dr. Hagebrook talked about time being an issue. Adults don't have time to take 4 or 5 traditional length classes at once on top of their regular lives. So by using compressed 8-week classes, we allow them to focus on only 2 classes at a time. If they want to be a full-time student, if they want to be a part-time student, they focus on 1 class at a time. But by using 8-week classes, they can complete the same number of classes during the term, but focus on fewer classes at a time. And that is huge for financial aid eligibility and for peace of mind for the students. Consistent scheduling is key. Mostly our classes have migrated to fully online. When we first started the program, they were about half and half, in person and online. Those in-person classes were always Tuesday, Thursday evenings from 6 to 9. So we could tell the student, no matter what semester it is or what class you're in, if you have an in-person class, it's Tuesday, Thursday, 6 to 9. They can handle that. It's the changing schedules each term that throw them off. Comprehensive pathways is really critical. We need to be able to offer all the coursework that the student needs to graduate in their program. We started with 2 pathways, psychology and business. Now we're up to 9 associate degree pathways and a handful of certificate programs. But for all of those programs, we offer the complete required classes, major and GE. And then we also build the programs as a cohort because we make use of the coursework that students have taken previously from our institution or other institutions. And we do credit for prior learning, which Matt will talk about more. They may not need to do the entire program. And so for some of them, they may not follow that cohort exactly. So we like to think of these as open cohorts, which allow the student the most flexibility. It does diminish a little bit the effects, the peer support effects of a true, locked in cohort, but we really feel like the flexibility outweighs that. And bottom line, we want to help students complete their degree as soon as it is feasible for them to do that, so they can either move on to a bachelor's degree or move into work or move into a higher level position. So I'm going to turn this over to Matt to talk about credit for prior learning.
And one note before we switch into the credit for prior learning, if you were in the earlier session where Jason mentioned the 15 to finish data that shows a high prediction of a person's ability to persist if they take 15 credit hours. As we talk about adults, that doesn't seem as feasible, but when you look at the ACE program, when you look at University of Memphis, and then the Louisville's adult-focused programs, we do things in a way that helps them get to that 15 in a compressed format via the 8-week courses, via winter sections and summer sections, so that a person can maintain continuous enrollment, which is also predictive of a person's ability to persist to graduation. So think about it in those ways when you're working with adults that are trying to do part-time. Also, credit for prior learning is such a key in all of this. As mentioned in Dr. Hagerbrook's presentation, as he went silent at that one point, I was like, oh, this is our spot. We're hearing about CPL. It's so important because it has been predicted that people will get to graduation faster and with a greater pace. And we know that college level learning happens outside of the classrooms. And if we can quantify that and assess that, then there is no doubt that that should translate to credit so people don't have to retake courses. So we often hear prior learning assessment, but also now we are moving towards the phrasing of credit for prior learning. You hear some different phrasing in other countries, but this is kind of what encapsulates learning that happens outside the confines of the college walls. So as I mentioned, the PLA Boost, it's an empirical-based study of 72 institutions that have basically submitted data that show proof that people can get to graduation quicker, but also at a higher rate. And it saves students a heck of a lot of money when you acknowledge and value what they bring. Not only that, but it creates a sense of belonging in the sense that if you tell a person that they have high level learning that can translate into college credits, what happens? They feel more connected to the institution, they feel more valued, and they feel more ready to learn. Not only that, they actually take more college credits. How is that possible if they get there faster and they graduate at a higher rate, but they take 17.6 on average more college credits? Well, the simple answer, since I'm not sitting in front of you, making you raise your hand and suggest answers, is retention. When we can boost retention by 5, 10 points, we see a net positive revenue from offering credit for prior learning. So although people are getting there faster and graduating at a higher rate, they still, in aggregate, take more credits, and you generate more revenue from this population when you acknowledge and value them. So it's a really key element of this work that you have to use when you talk with administrators, as well as faculty that think maybe course credits or classes might not be taught. We actually see growth in both of those things. So what is CPL? It is a range of things, including AP testing. And I often state this when I do presentations. You've got faculty all over the country that are pretty just fine with AP testing. But then when we talk about CPL, they start to get a little skeptical. Well, I say, if you're cool with a 17 or 18-year-old demonstrating excellence, let's let adults do the same. And we do that through CLEP and DSST, institutional exams that are specific to particular disciplines or topics, and then industry recognized credentials, licenses or trainings that can be put into a database. Of course, our military occupations via the Community College of the Air Force, and our joint services transcripts from the other branches. And not only that, but one that makes a big dent in credit is credit by portfolio. This is done through a 3 credit hour class. Go ahead to the next slide there, Buffy. This is done through a 3 credit hour class at the University of Louisville through a particular framework. And as mentioned earlier, we're happy to share all of this. We'll share not only the slides, but some of the forms that we use in these processes, some of the transcripting that we use for compressed classes within the semester via ACE at Shasta, and then also our industry partnerships with which Tracy is going to talk about. But in this case, we develop, go back one, please, if you don't mind. We go into this process in a way that looks at a person's workplace evolution. That includes volunteer work, but also all of the work that they've done in industry. And we use an ELM, or experiential learning model, that is driven by the Kolb experiential learning cycle. Some use the Bloom's taxonomy, but we use this to frame our narratives alongside the validating documents to assess course credit by category, and at the University of Memphis, also by credit course crosswalk. So we do this documentation in a 3 credit hour class at the University of Louisville. Some do it in 1 credit hour classes, and some do it as independent study. But know that all are moderately effective. But we found in our data that the 3 credit hour class is the best path for retention, but also the greatest level of credit. So we can talk more about this, but know that as we move forward in the Tracy section, we are continuously available to you all to share all this data as well as our best practices. Turn it over to you, Tracy.
Thanks, Matt. Yes, please know we have done this presentation many, many times, but we could probably spend an hour on each of these topics individually. So we're giving you the high level view, and we're happy to have conversations getting deeper into the details. My section on corporate partnerships really starts with a spontaneous visit to our campus several years ago from some executives at a high-level organization in Memphis. You may have heard of them, FedEx. They are based in Memphis, and they came to us with a problem. Their problem was that their hub workers, their hourly workers, were turning over almost 100% every year, and they were looking at ways of trying to keep those employees engaged. They had a corporate tuition assistance program at that time, and they felt like that was key to changing some of those retention numbers, and they were looking for a partner to help them do that, and they chose the University of Memphis. One of the first conversations we had is that their program, their tuition assistance, like many other corporations, was tuition reimbursement. So students had to upfront the cost for their first semester and then be reimbursed depending on their grade typically. And for hourly workers, that was a barrier to get that first semester paid for upfront. So we flipped that model, and we now, through our corporate partnerships, do a direct to bill to the corporations, so that the students do not have to pay anything up front. That has dramatically changed the number of people who have been able to uptake in those benefits. It was a hard conversation on both sides, both with the corporation thinking about how to do things differently, and for us talking to our bursar's office about doing a direct bill. But we worked it all out, and it has been hugely successful. We also looked at evaluating their corporate training program for credit for prior learning opportunities, because FedEx had a very robust corporate training program, and it was college level learning that was happening there. And so we did that on the front end, which also became a recruitment tool to say, hey, if you attend the University of Memphis, send us your FedEx training transcript, and we can evaluate that for college credit. As Jason mentioned earlier, the importance of non-degree credentials and non-credit training programs are becoming more and more valuable to institutions. And so with all of our corporate partnerships, we explore non-credit training opportunities as well as academic pathways. And so, for example, we have a partnership with a large health organization here in Memphis. And so we provide, one of their highest needs was getting certified nurse assistants into their pipeline for employment. And so we launched a non-credit training opportunity that we also evaluated for credit for prior learning. And so once we get someone in that program, they complete that, they know that that is worth up to 3 college credit hours if they decide to pursue a bachelor's degree. That non-credit space is very often where we can be more nimble and make changes, responses to industry needs without going through several layers of curriculum councils and those kind of things. But always look at an opportunity to evaluate that for credit for prior learning. And then another key component that we have is what we call our Prep Academy. If you'll go back one, Buffy, I just wanted to highlight our first partner, FedEx, said we want a pathway for everyone. And so we want a pathway for those students who did not go to college to begin with, or those employees who had tried college and maybe not been as successful in it as they had hoped. We designed what we call Prep Academy. It is a pre-admission program, completely online and self-paced, so they did not have to meet admissions requirements that are typical for our institution. They complete this Prep Academy. It is based on career planning and development, personal and career success, academic success as well. And if an employee completes that entire experience, then they have earned admission to the University of Memphis, regardless of any of their previous academic history. They have earned admission to our institution, as well as 12 credit hours through our credit for prior learning. And so not only are they getting admitted, they're actually getting almost a full semester for that work. That is now a part of all of our corporate partnership programs. Basically what we built for our first corporate partner, we've replicated now for 5 other big partnerships as well. The next slide shows you just a couple of the lessons that we learned in our process of building these partnerships. We established a specific brand for each one of these. We found that employees at those organizations wanted to know that something special had been created for them. And so they all have their own individual brands. It's a way to distinguish it also from some of the other programs that may be available to them. We learned that marketing is a two-way street. We need to spend money in marketing. The organization, the corporation needs to spend money in marketing, and we need to do that together. What is the value that they can get at the company by earning their degree? What career paths can they pursue once they get that credential? We also learned there was a lot more interest than actual enrollment, and so we needed a lot more front-end staff to kind of help those individuals who were interested get enrolled, get admitted, get transcripts. The processes took a lot longer than we thought initially, and we also needed a lot more staff. We approach this as a concierge approach. They start with us, we get them through the admissions process, we get them through that first semester, and then in some cases turn them over to an academic advisor in the department after that. But you need a lot of assistance in that process. And then lastly, one of the things that we started with our corporate partnerships, it's now available for anyone. So any of you on this webinar today can join this if you'd like, but we did start with our corporate partnerships, something that we call Try Before You Buy. It's an online class. You don't have to be admitted. All you need is an email address to sign up for this. One of the courses is called Adulting 101, a practical guide to managing your resources. So how to plan for mortgages, how to plan for retirement, all of those great things. Anyone can sign up for this. Remember I said those organizations wanted an on-ramp for anyone. And a lot of people are a little hesitant about online learning. Can I do this? Do I have the time? This is a way for them to dive into that, to learn about our learning management system, our online system, while they're also getting some helpful information. And guess what? We evaluated this for credit for prior learning. So if a person completes this course, and we have 3 others and other topics like a college prep course, a nutrition course, a wellness course, and they become a University of Memphis student, they can apply for 3 hours of college credit through our Credit for Prior Learning program. So they're getting additional value in their experience as well. Lots of students have done this. We're seeing many of those students do convert to being a University of Memphis student. So it's a recruitment tool as well. And so the website's there. If you're interested, please take a look. We'd love to talk to you more about any of these options. We have our contact information here. Please feel free to reach out. I know we've saved some time for questions as well, but we are all happy to have some individual or collective meetings with you to talk about these further. So I'll open it up for our questions if someone's been monitoring that.
There was a question or a sharing of information from a participant speaking to Modern States, modernstates.org, in relation to preparation for CLEP exams. And Modern States, echoing the participant who shared this information, is an amazing resource, free online self-paced courses that students can make use of to prepare for CLEP exams. And if a student completes the Modern States prep course for the exam, then they can take the CLEP exam for free. So the coursework is free. It enables them to take the CLEP exam for free. And then colleges and universities that accept CLEP credit can go ahead and post those equivalent courses to the student's transcript. So it's just a win-win all around. So again, that's modernstates.org. And I'll go ahead and share the link on the website.
And Buffy,
I'll
jump
in the chat.
To say we encourage our students at the University of Memphis to make use of that Modern States resource. One thing that we have all learned with our adult learners is once they have interest in going to college or coming back to college, we need something for them to do immediately. Very often we don't have our next term that starts in a couple of months or maybe a couple of weeks if we're early. But pointing students to those credit for prior learning opportunities, like taking a CLEP exam, like working on a portfolio that Matt mentioned, helps them stay engaged and stay more interested in the process. And so there's a huge benefit to those resources.
There's oh, go ahead.
I was going to say, we've got a number of questions in the chat, and I want to start with the first one. And it was about how we started a conversation with our institutions to offer prior learning credit or credit for prior learning, and who were the key stakeholders. So I'll let you two weigh in on that as well. But I'll just say that I was very fortunate to walk into a situation where the institution has done that for 30 years. Not all of us are that fortunate. So we have to find a way for the top administrators to be open to this and know that you have allies at so many institutions, including the Prior Learning Assessment Network, which we can share information about. But there are a range of institutions that are committed to sharing best practices so that you can take documentation to your administrators and the faculty to demonstrate the rigor and the quality that is being done in this process. It is both standard and replicable across the country, and we can help you set the course for that. So jump in, others, on that question, then we'll keep moving through the questions.
I'll
So
just add one. I'm sorry,
go ahead.
One
go
short
ahead, Tracy.
thing. Find some advocates in certain departments. You don't have to change the whole institution right off the bat. Start with a couple of departments that are really interested and get those key advocates, and then build your partnership and coalition from there.
And at Shasta College, we recognized AP, we recognized military of a sort. We gave elective credit for that. At a community college, students generally don't need elective credit. So that was kind of a, sure, have some elective credit units that don't do anything for you except for use up your financial aid. And we also did credit by exam, instructor exams. And it actually took the chancellor's office working on statewide policy to change and update to really force the issue at California community colleges. Some community colleges were already doing a lot. We were moving in the direction of doing more, and then the policy came down, and that was super helpful. But we got endorsement from some key people on campus, our president, our vice president of instruction, president of academic senate, and a handful of career technical faculty who were already sort of what they felt like secretly doing various forms of credit for prior learning in a very haphazard way. And when we started talking about this, they were like, I'm kind of doing that. Am I going to get in trouble? We're like, no, we want to celebrate you. We want to formalize this and share what you're doing with the rest of the campus, and let's make it standard. But we also took those key people to CALE, the annual CALE conference, Council on Adult and Experiential Learning, and had them go to sessions on credit for prior learning. And they were already leaning in that direction before we went, came back, they were all converts, just made some serious headway after that.
Yeah, and just know we've got your back on this. So if you want to learn more about CPL, reach out to us individually. We can tell you about our own institutions. We can tell you about the Council on Adult and Experiential Learning. We can tell you about student-ready strategies, the Prior Learning Assessment Network. There are a lot of resources there for you so that you're not doing this on your own. The next question comes from Amber. Thanks so much. What policy changes can instructors make to improve retention within the classroom? And I love this one because I specifically work with a lot of adult students as a faculty member and have fought the good fight in trying to get people to stay around for the long term. And it translates perfectly to what we're doing with traditional age students, and that is belonging. But it takes a different shape when so many of our learners that are adults are doing online related courses. So I like to say in our program that we created a solidarity movement. And what I mean by that is we've linked up arms, both the instructor and all the students, and said, we are going to pick people up when they fall down and pull them forward so that we all finish together. When that sense of community and belonging through interaction occurs, you've got people watching out for one another to try and push them through to the finish line in courses. The content is based on learning outcomes. So that is important and necessary. But what we see in all of the retention literature is that less than 50% of people are leaving because of grades. They're leaving because of life. And when we can invest in one another and pick each other up when life inevitably intervenes, we're going to be in really good shape there.
I'll add to that, Matt, that, we have a lot of resources for our adult learners that are on campus. But to your point, so many of them are taking online classes only. So how can we provide support from our counseling services to those online students? It takes a little bit more effort and a little bit more conversation. How do we offer writing support or other educational support, tutoring? There's a lot of great resources out there now to be able to put those in an online only platform. So just be intentional and make sure even career services are available after hours or online to those adult students.
I'll echo that. Having staff, classified staff, support staff, as well as counseling. In our case, we have counseling faculty dedicated to this population is absolutely key. If a student is wanting to come back to school, nervous about coming back to school, and then you just say, oh, just call the admissions office, where there's you may need to wait on the phone to talk to somebody because of the volume of calls. People are trying to call during their 15-minute break at work or their half-hour break at lunch. They don't want to spend so much time on the phone waiting to talk to somebody or calling an office and then finding out it's the wrong office. It's so critical to have point people for this population and direct your potential students to those point people. Otherwise, it can be really easy to lose them, and they're going to go to another school that is more adult learner friendly, because there are so many options now. So if you want your students to come back to you, as we mentioned earlier, you have got to change how you do some things.
And it was mentioned earlier, a question about how can we get this going? How can we get CPL on our campus? Know that 80%, we have just found research via survey research, that 80% of adults that are looking to go back are basing their decision on whether or not you have credit for prior learning at your institution. So keep that in mind, and just know that is a data point that you can share with your administration if they're not, or they're being reluctant in any way. We've also got another question here about how do we support students that are ESL, or English as a second language or third language, and how do you assess college readiness? And I'll just state, at the University of Louisville, you're going to hear from my distinguished colleague, Dr. Jeff Bailey, at the Resources for Academic Achievement. I think the vast majority of us at larger campuses have very extensive services for English as second or third language. And those centers will both do the assessment, but also provide the type of support. So there is a sense of access and belonging. So we're kind of committed to that. And I know that you two can weigh in as well about your ESL approach, especially in California also.
In our part of California, we don't have a huge ESL population, honestly. We do have non-credit coursework for ESL students, as well as non-credit coursework for students who need to finish a high school diploma or get their GED. And I'll be really honest, historically, our campus has not done a great job of connecting students once they complete our non-credit ESL and GED coursework to the rest of the campus. And we have been working on that in the last year to provide better bridging and better connections between the regular campus and our non-credit ESL and GED. So if that's a situation on your campus, if you're not seeing ESL students in your regular classes, or former ESL students in your regular classes, it's a good idea to say, well, what bridge is there from non-credit to the credit environment? And like I said, it's in its infancy that we're working on it and strengthening that bridge. I would call it a tiny rickety wooden bridge at this point. It's not a thoroughfare.
We're probably in a little bit a more stable bridge, but still building at the University of Memphis that bridge as well. And I believe credit for prior learning is the way that we can get that road paved and get to that thoroughfare. Promoting ours currently, intensive English, is in our non-credit space, and so credit for prior learning is a great way to give that some academic value, and we're working on that as well.
Our Upswing colleagues mentioned that they might have a question or two for us as we close in on time, but we have about 3 minutes, so maybe we could hit another question, and then we'll do the wrap up.
Yeah, first off, this was a really great, enlightening, and insightful presentation. I really appreciate the three of you all coming here and just sharing a little bit more about the ways in which you're approaching adult learners. We had a question, or a couple of questions, but there were so many that were coming in that we were just like, okay, we'll just let everyone else take them. The biggest question that we were really wanted to just kind of get a little bit more insight into is expanding on how to scale that adult learner sense of belonging, so that it's, I know when you were talking earlier, Buffy, you were just saying how it can cost more, it can be more than you anticipate in terms of just staff members. So just thinking through, how are, especially some of our more under-resourced institutions, able to kind of create that sense of personalized belonging, but at scale?
So one of the things that I would point out is that having dedicated staff to this population on the surface appears to cost more, but our students retain and our students graduate at a higher rate than our typical students. And because in California, we are partially funded on enrollment and then also partially funded on completion. So if students are staying in school and they're taking more units and they're completing, and that's how we're funded, is it really costing more? So we're actually in the process right now of doing a return on investment analysis of our staffing costs compared to what our students bring in to the institution. And I am hoping that it proves to be an effective return on an investment, because honestly, I would love to see this kind of level of case management for all of our students. I mean, we say adult learners do not have time to mess around and call this office and that office and figure out who they need to talk. I would posit that no student has time to do all that. Most of our students, regardless of their age, are working at least part-time and have other responsibilities, especially at the community college. It's pretty rare to have students that are solely students and not doing anything else. So so it appears to be costly, but we'll find out if it really is.
And I just want to say, as I talked about in the beginning, you have to put yourself in the shoes of these people. Think about the time you didn't finish what you wanted. Those aren't good feelings. So as you connect, you must be gentle and considerate. And to create a sense of belonging, you have to think about touch points. What are the touch points at your institution they connect with you? Once they're enrolled, what are the touch points? Oftentimes, it is not clubs on campus. It is not walking around, hanging out, sitting in a beautiful, green, lush, tree-ridden campus. It is in class, out of class, online, plugged in, then going back to take care and feed your family, going back to work after this. Think about those things as you create community, and know that you have to find those pockets to create a sense of belonging and commonality. And that commonality is that there are so many competing responsibilities for the people that you're serving. If you acknowledge that, if you embrace that as a mantra of those individuals navigating this, they will engage and they'll think, we're in this together. We've got a lot going on, but this matters for the potential that we have in our lives.
Awesome, so true, and such great nuggets of wisdom there. Thank you all so much for sharing your insights again. Just wanted to let everyone know how to contact you all. Tracy Robinson at University of Memphis, the executive director of CRE. Her email address is tracy.robinson@memphis.edu. And then Dr. Matt Bergman, VP of Academic Innovation and Study Ready Strategies. His email is matt.bergman@louisville.edu. And then last but not least, Elizabeth Buffy Tanner, who has been working in at Shasta College, an area of California that I at least know a pretty good bit about, even if others say that they don't. But she's currently the director of innovation and special projects there as well. And her email is btanner@shastacollege.edu. And so if you all want to get in contact with them to learn a little bit more, I know some people were asking about some of these try before you buy type courses and things like that as well. Certainly feel free to reach out to them. But thank you all so much for just sharing your insights and wisdom here. And there's so much for us to take away. I really appreciate your time today.
Thank you.